Hi, this is Hit Christian, and I'm with Deborah Spindle. She works with Right to Win Ozarks, and she has media on TikTok and YouTube. You can find her channel. I apologize about the quality of my voice; it's terrible today. But she had a meeting with the marketing director for the Christian County Library last week, and she was able to communicate some of her concerns with them, and she found it frustrating. But first, before we get into that, tell us about what you do with Right to Win Ozark, how you're part of that with your mom, Gretchen Garrity.
Yeah. So I'm kind of the lesser half, unpaid intern portion of Right to Know Ozarks, I
I
think.
can see unpaid intern. I don't think you're the lesser half of the
Well,
group.
so my mom, Gretchen is brilliant. She does mainly the blogs, and then I kind of handle the social media aspect, and then I kind of joke around. I have a wicked Irish sense of humor, and so that kind of plays in some of the memes that I make and social media posts that I've made. So that's kind of what I do. A little tongue in cheek type posts.
Yeah, your jokes tend to be a little funny. You have some bite to it. You do a
Yeah.
lot of memes.
Yes.
You you give a lot of, I don't know. You bring a little bit of lightness to what's going on in the community instead of Gretchen's posts, which are typically investigative journalism.
Right.
You give, I don't know, more Gen Z,
Yikes.
millennial. Yikes. I'm not saying you're young. I'm just saying you're younger.
Yeah.
You. It's more social media oriented.
It definitely is. I think I try to condense. Well, first of all, I mean, some of these situations are so intensely frustrating that if I don't laugh, I'll just be screaming into the void. So that's kind of where it came from for me. Also, um, I don't know. I try to coalesce it in a way that I find entertaining. A lot of this is, reading through a lot of things and making deep connections, and everything's a rabbit trail or rabbit hole, and so I just kind of make it into a way that I can consume it and enjoy it.
Like your YouTube video that you just put out, was it the Friday night?
Yeah.
It was only what, 20 seconds long?
Yeah, my 60-second updates on the library. I just
Okay.
started doing those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you took a 2 hour meeting and you made it relatively short,
Yeah.
and you added a little bit of a joke right at the end, and you point out that the KSNU reporter, his man bun,
Yeah.
which is rather large.
It's like a rat nest, really.
Yeah, it's outdated a little.
I felt like Man Bun was generous, honestly. I
Yeah.
could have gone so many different directions there.
Yeah. So, and it is a long 2 hour meeting.
Right.
It's so brutal having to listen to them, him and Haw over every little detail when it really just could be simply defined and accepted and put forward. But there's people in the background who are consistently interfering with the board.
It would seem so. It would definitely seem so. And, I understand why a lot of people, they just abhor going to these meetings because they are long, they are tedious, and it's a lot of nuance. And a lot of it is if you know, and if you don't, you just don't. And so that's kind of where my TikToks are coming from, that point of view of let's make it in a way that someone who really doesn't care but kind of wants to know can consume the info. And that's my opinion, and I make myself laugh. And I guess that's, at the end of the day, that's really all I'm trying to do.
Well, I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So, you met with the marketing director last week, and you wanted to bring your concerns about how the Christian County Library doesn't seem to respond to criticism from the community. And what was his take from that?
Well, yes, I met with the marketing director last week. First, you kind of have to go back to the meeting in October of 24, where a presentation on the library's survey. They call it the NPS score or Net Promoter Score, was presented during the monthly board meeting. And I was blown away. I mean, they are, according to these numbers, they're a world-class library. According to these numbers, nobody's ever been happier with the state of the library than it is now. And, I sit in these meetings with, at the height of them, maybe 100 standing room, only 100 people in the room, police officers having to make sure the peace is kept. So I know that that's just not true. Like, objectively, there's no way. So, I'm taking in these numbers during the presentation. I'm like, there's no way. And so after the meeting, it was really bugging me. It was niggling me in my mind and like this niggling little doubt. And so I sunshine requested from the library how the raw data from the scores. And they were good enough to send it. And it's just I think it was the data they have, they've sent 8,000 according to the presentation, and they've received 600 and some odd responses. And that is true. What they are hiding from that is that those 600 responses are over like a 4-year time period. So they don't...
So you divide that up, that's about 125 people per year.
Well, it started out at like 300 the first year because, So as was explained to me during the meeting, the first year that they did the NPS score, they sent it to every active cardholder. By active cardholder, they're saying, and I've heard conflicting stories about what constitutes an active cardholder, but according to the last meeting I had, it's someone with a card in the last 3 years.
So out of 80,000 people in the county,
right,
only 8,000 people are active cardholders?
Something like that. I think they have 32,000 households, and out of that 32,000, there's like 11,000 cards or something like that. I'll post the data, or I'll share with you the data. But yeah, so I get this giant data dump of all these things, and I'm looking through it, and it's broken down by year, and so I'm seeing that the first year there was a huge jump. A lot of people responded. Wow, pretty good. 300 people responded to a survey, which, surveys are boring. It's hard to get people to take surveys. And then I'm seeing that it's going further and further down, like the number of responses. And so initially I did not understand why that was. I'm thinking, are they sending less surveys out? Are they cherry picking who gets the survey? I have questions.
Sure.
So I contacted the marketing director at the library, and I was like, I've got these questions, and there was met with some attitude, which, I understand. I found out later, he was pretty wary about meeting with me because of my TikToks. So I have at least one fan.
So he's watching your TikToks?
He's definitely watching them, yeah. I said that. I was like, so does that mean you're watching my TikToks? And he was like, I hate you.
So the marketing director, I mean, that sort of would be his job to keep up with what's going on in the community, what's being said about the library. Mm-hmm. I would expect him to do that.
Yeah.
Just because he needs to know what's going on, whether it's positive or negative being said about the library. And frankly, he has to.
Right.
And so he probably is going to have to review this whole podcast.
Uh-oh. I did promise to not make a TikTok about him, but I feel like this is kind of a loophole. So
yeah, because this is not a TikTok.
Right.
This is,
and I'm not making it, so the promise remains intact.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at the data and it breaks down into different parts,
right,
what stands out to you as the most concerning?
So I think the most concerning aspect of the data that I found out later, the reason that the respondent number for the survey is going down is because they do not resend the survey out. So if you took the survey in 2021, you'll never take it again. Okay. It went out to the large pool of cardholders. You got that big response the first year. It went down because there's less and less new people to send it. If you've never taken the survey, they'll keep sending it. But if you have, I don't know if that's true. So all these questions were going on. So
so if you were part of the pool of 8,000 active card members who didn't take the survey, they'll send it out to you one more time or multiple
So
times?
he says. So I, am newer to the area, I guess. We've
I
lived
don't
here
think
2
I've
years.
ever received this. And I don't know if my family's ever received it either because they're card members too.
So that was brought up during the meeting, and he said, well, do you have an active email, or did you put the right email, or maybe it went to your spam, or do you get I didn't remember receiving the survey, but I actually, funnily enough, looked back through my TikToks when I thought the TikTok ban was happening, and I saw that I'd made a video about it. So
Okay.
Yay, TikTok. But I saw the video of me receiving it in my email, and I made a funny meme about it. And I happened to have saved the email. So I went back and I was like, okay, so I did get the survey. And I go through and I was able to see what it looked like. And but I'd never gotten it again. So I hadn't taken it that first year I got it, and I never got it again. So I don't know, maybe myth busted. I have questions about that as well. I don't know how true that is because, again, I only received it one time. I've been here 2 years, so.
Who pays for this survey? Are we paying a company to do this, or is this something?
Yeah, this is through Savannah. Orange Boy and Savannah, I guess it's the same company or they're linked somehow. Orange Boy is the one doing the survey, the NPS survey. And we already pay for Savannah, he's saying. So
Okay, so this is an outside contractor that the library's paying.
Currently already using them. So
Okay, so it's not an internal cost, it's an external cost.
yeah, I think he mentioned something like $6,000 a year that we pay for it.
So once the data comes in, we may or may not be sending it out multiple times to people who haven't taken it. But then once they've taken it, then they never receive it again.
They never get it again. And so that was my big beef, I guess, with that. And I mentioned it to him and I said, what if I was happy with my library experience in 2021, but now 2024, I'm not so happy and my feelings have changed. And basically there's no way for them to capture that data right now. If you've already filled out the survey, it's done. The only ways that the other methods that they use to track people's happiness at the library is they use a door count. They use if you walk in and out, it's counted.
Yeah.
Book circulation, new card holders, card retention, and whether people are attending the event. So that's it. So if you're unhappy and you want to express that concern, there's no way for you to do that besides, meeting with somebody directly.
And then there's also the book removal request, and
the reconsideration.
Reconsideration. Thank you. And so that seems to be the only way to give any kind of feedback to the library.
Right.
And and they don't seem to be tracking that as part of the survey. So that's completely separate data.
Right.
So if there's any reconsiderations, they are acting like that's just not part of the experience at all for the library patrons. And
I did ask him, I said, so they've already sent out the surveys that they're going to send out. Now the pool of surveys goes to people who are new card holders. So if you just moved here and you got a library card, you may get a survey. And I said, what's your limit here? What's the point where you're not going to send out a survey to 40 people? That's crazy. So I know last year he said they had 140 people that they sent it out to.
So that's
getting less and less.
So that means they only had 140 new members or new.
No, that's just who responded, I guess, to the survey. I don't know. When I got the Sunshine request, it was 97. So I mean, I don't know.
I wonder how many new card members they're getting every single year.
Yeah.
So, and that sort of drives other questions. Like, out of 80,000 people in the county, why do we have such a small portion of the county who are card members?
Right.
Then I wonder, why are we only getting so many new card members? Why don't we have a card drive?
Mm-hmm.
So I have those types of questions that I think we should be addressing as a community.
Right.
Because if literacy is so important, why is the library spending $4 million a year, but only serving such a small portion of the library? And then for the people who are active card members, it seems like that's a smaller and smaller portion every year too.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't seem to care. But they seem very eager to have a larger and larger budget every year.
Right.
But have a smaller and smaller portion of people they serve.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't seem to be a good use of resources. but we're a world-class library, and everybody who they actually do serve is super, super happy, but we don't have any follow-up surveys to know if that continues to be true year after year.
Right. And I think, too, like the way that the survey questions were worded and the way the answers are worded, it could have been confusing for people. And if you did want, so, and this is something I brought up with him, too, is like not everybody wants to be contacted by the library. And so if you rated it low and then it said, well, can we they want your contact info for them to, which I understand. I totally get that. You want to be able to make it right if you can. But some people need like an anonymous way or a yearly way. He did mention that they will do a community-wide survey. He's hoping to do one in 2025 this year. But again, that's a budget thing. He mentioned it's a budget issue. He's going to have to get it approved. These things can be costly. Supposedly, I don't know.
I do think the board is interested in hearing what the community has to say. The 4 out of 5 members of the board want to hear what the community has to say. So hopefully he will have support from the board on this issue. But I would hope that the survey is worded in such a way to actually get an honest route. Did he give you any idea what the questions were going to be?
Yeah, I know what the questions are because I did take the survey. And I told him that, he said, oh, what'd you rate us? I said a 0. And he was like, well, that's not very helpful. So,
well, it is helpful. All feedback is helpful feedback.
Yeah, the questions are like how, gosh, I'm going to have to remember offhand. But they're like, how would you recommend the library to somebody else? Questions like that. What service did you use? Whether it was internet, book circulation,
sure,
those type of questions.
And
a lot of people in the response, because I got the responses captured as well, and they were like, "What do you mean? Would I refer someone to the library? It's a library. It's a public library. Everyone knows about it. That's like, would I refer somebody, to the DMV? Like, it's kind of weird question to ask." So,
did it ask any questions concerning the controversies going on in the library?
No, but the survey was written and built in 2021.
So it's not even an updated survey that takes into consideration everything that's happened, not only locally, but nationally, because this is not a local issue. This is a national issue.
Right.
So,
and like you touched on before too, yes, the book reconsideration request form is there, so you can do that. But if you find a book in the library and you have no recourse other than to fill that out. There's no one to talk to unless you make an appointment. And I had kind of mentioned, I went with a colleague, but we kind of were like, can there be a survey where you're like, hey, I didn't like that book and I don't want you to contact me, or I do want you to contact me about it? There's nothing like that. There's nothing that you can take just... So, I mean, he mentioned this is all money. It's a money thing. So.
Yeah, and the reconsideration form, there doesn't seem to be a review board or a subcommittee. There's no process by which it's transparent on how that's done.
Well, I've done several of those. One of which was actually removed. It was a Wattpad book, which was like outrageously offensive. But basically, what the then director, Renee Brummett, would do is she would ask the employees to do it. So the employees who chose the book to be in there are now reviewing it, which doesn't seem super...
It's not a good review process.
Right.
It should be a review process that is set up by the board. It goes through whether it follows state statute, whether it's appropriate in the right collection or not, whether it has, whether it meets community standards. It has a long list of things you could do.
Yeah.
You could even bring in community members like the Nixa School Board does. So there are ways to do it that makes it legal and even protects the library against lawsuits when you...
And more unbiased, because
unbiased.
It gets to be a little bit of an echo chamber, I think, in there. Yeah. And in other groups as well, like, that's why I was kind of investigating this, because I had heard from, kind of the group that sits with us at the library meetings and the people that have been here from day one, and none of them are receiving these surveys. And so I'm thinking, am I just in an echo chamber? Maybe we just, nope. I mean, they're just not sending it out unless you've provided.
Yeah. kind of wonder, what does he mean by money?
Basically, all these things cost money. He's saying to build out a new survey is going to cost money. To send out mailers, which we suggested will cost money. The community-wide survey is going to cost money. All of this is costing money, he's saying. So,
but they have 7 members on their marketing team.
Right.
And they seem to be able to put up TikToks and Facebook ads, and they have LinkedIn ads. I don't know if they're on Blue Sky, but they seem to be on every social media platform there is. Right. And putting ads up costs money. So they seem to have money for things like that, but they don't seem to have money to ask the community what the community thinks about basic questions.
Right. Or what they would like to see in their library. I don't think there are any questions like that.
Yeah. So. It's just curious.
I got to refresh my memory on some of this because it's been a while since I looked at that survey, but maybe I can post a TikTok of that because I did video or screen record me taking the survey. But I know it's rough out there. I think kind of the impression that I got was if you're not enjoying the library services, you can leave, and that's the only way where we're going to record you're leaving, is your card expiring and you're not walking through the door anymore. And I told him, I was like, there's a whole group of disenfranchised people, homeschool community and Christian community that don't come to the library anymore because, and you're going to have to really charm these people back in because the trust is broken.
Well, I don't think they really care whether that part of the community comes back. Right. It again goes back to that idea that we have a large budget, but it doesn't matter if we're serving 5 people or 100 people or 10,000 people. We are curators of books, and whether our population is served with one person, it doesn't matter. We have all this money, and it just doesn't matter to us. Right. I don't think they care at the end of the day on how many people they're serving in the community. They're only concerned about the right people being served, the correct people being served, the people that aren't the wrong people. They have a filter for who's the right people.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think a community-wide survey is definitely on the right track. I hope that happens. My opinion is we need to talk to these people who aren't coming to the library anymore.
Yeah, I think everybody should be served at the library.
Yeah.
If you're gay, you should be served at the library. If you're trans, you should be served at the library. If you're a Christian, you should be served at the library. There should be an opportunity for everybody in the community to come. I would like to see all 80,000 members of the Christian County community served at the library in some capacity.
Well, too, if you're a homeowner in Christian County and you don't have an active library card because maybe you find some of the material in there offensive, you still deserve to have your voice heard. You still deserve to be able to fill out a survey and say, I'm not happy with the way things are going in that direction with my tax-funded dollars.
Yeah, it's about, $33 to $40 per household?
Something like that. But, I mean, hey, it's still, we should... I feel like, having an active card shouldn't be the criteria.
Yeah, everybody who's putting money into it should have a voice.
Right.
And it's unfair to just exclude a whole group of people because you just disappear off the record. And if you disappear off the record, we don't have to deal with you.
And what I think, and this is, my hypothesizing, my theory here, I think the numbers, they're saying that the numbers are going up after COVID and things are recovering, but we're not back to pre-COVID numbers. And then you also have to remember that they opened the Nixa branch in 2019, so there was a big jump of new cardholders in Nixa. And then they opened Sparta and Clever when in 2021?
About the same time. So they
a year or two after. And so again, another jump in cardholders. So it's kind of hiding the people that have left.
Yeah.
Is that jump.
I think so too. You have the new branches which are hiding the fact that they wouldn't have had those numbers without those new branches.
Right.
So
exactly. Big changes have happened, and
yeah.
So it kind of makes the numbers hard. Plus we had, 2020, we know what happened in 2020, so they were able to justify a lot of the declining
Yeah, I think that if they continue down the path that they're on, the library will have declining numbers more and more rather than an increase.
But it'll have a world-class NPS score. So there's that.
Which seems curated
Right.
to give them the best score possible by eliminating any kind of negative feedback.
Right.
And that's not a score. That's BS.
Right. It's like, if you do a survey, but you only let your friends take it, basically. I mean, it's kind of...
Yeah. Or you let brand new people who show up to, you're only allowing brand new people to show up who get the very first impression of the building,
Right.
walk in, and then say, what do you think? And they're all like, well, this seems nice. I don't see any problem, because they haven't had
It's
an
a new
opportunity.
experience, right?
Yeah.
They haven't looked through the collection. They haven't, yeah.
Their experience is novelty, and novelty is always going to override everything else,
Right.
because that's how we see things. And until the novelty wears off, they don't have a chance to truly dig into what's going on. So,
Right. I mean, I think I would like to start moving in more positive direction with the library. It's been really tough to feel like our voices are not heard. The marketing director did mention that, he felt that it was inappropriate for us to be speaking at the meetings, that we need to be having these discussions directly with staff or directly. And I told him, I said, look, I'm not going to accost a librarian at their job and go, hey, I don't like it may not have even been that person who put the book in the collection. It's somebody else. And I think we've seen over the last 2 years that the people who did choose some of these explicit materials in the library don't care.
really?
They don't care.
He thought it was more
Yeah.
appropriate for us to speak to the librarians
Yes.
directly.
Yes.
Because Renee was always like, I am the wall. You don't speak to my staff. You
No.
don't talk to anyone else besides me. And that is such a strange attitude, because
Yeah.
the whole point of having the public comments was for us to act as to use our free speech rights
Right.
to speak to a public entity, a tax-paying entity.
Right.
That is such a strange attitude for him to have. He
Yeah.
wants to silence our viewpoints.
And we did bring up, my girlfriend that came, she mentioned, just a friend, not an actual girlfriend. She mentioned that, she had gone to the library. She said, hey, I found this and this is
No.
concerning material. And they went, okay, we will pass that along. And so there's no record. You don't know that they recorded the complaint. There's no evidence. They're just going to pass it along. You don't know that they threw that in the wastebasket. We have no, it's never recorded. It's never made official. There's no report on it.
Well, it didn't go to the NPS report, apparently.
Apparently not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was our whole point too, was that, I would love it if I could go and talk to a librarian and they're like, oh yeah, that's weird. Let's put this aside. No, that's not how that works. They go, okay, thanks. We'll let someone know. And then the book goes right back on the shelf. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we pulled all 40 of those books that one time.
right.
And then they wanted to get them back on the shelf as quickly as possible without an appropriate review process.
Mm-hmm.
I know I met with Renee and this marketing director, and he was in the meeting, and I think he was recording and taking notes as I was speaking with Renee. And during that entire process, I gave my spiel about why the books were inappropriate for children to be placed in front of them. And they just ignored it.
Right.
And at the end of the meeting, Renee is just telling me, absolutely, this is a hill she's going to die on.
Yeah. And it was so funny too, because although he, said that he felt it was inappropriate for us to speak at the meetings, he also mentioned that we were heard because he made the parent resource page on the library's website. Took him 6 months to do, which I'm not a computer whiz, but 6 months for a web page seems like a long time.
Parent resource page is not talking about any of the issues we
Right.
had concerns about.
Exactly.
It doesn't address anything.
They do have like a comment box or a complaint box or something at the library. But again, you don't know if they're emptying that into a trash can or not. It's never recorded.
It's not going to the NPS report.
It's not going to the NPS scores, okay?
Yeah.
We're a world-class library as far as anybody knows.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
And this is the same marketing director that goes on to conferences to brag about how great Christian County Library is. He goes and gets, they're not TED Talks, but he's asked to do conferences and big speeches, and people use him as an example for how great his system is.
Right. And the other thing too is, he mentioned he was cautious to meet with me because of my terrible reputation and my really mean TikToks. And so that's the other thing. And I mentioned to him, I said, I know that maybe my filming at the meetings has made people uncomfortable, or that, my TikToks can be mean. I said, I'll own that. Okay. I'll own it. And that's why I'm not going to go up to a librarian at their job and make them uncomfortable and feel like, that's just not my style. And I think he had to, in the end, acknowledge that us speaking at the meetings has made a difference, obviously.
Just a little.
It's made a difference, our persistence. And honestly, I think we've said this in a couple other, circumstances, maybe not on camera, but, or on a podcast, but had they just listened in the first place, had there been any form of compromise, you would not have galvanized a group of people to be this consistent. And I mean, getting anyone to work together in a volunteer setting is like herding cats, okay? But we have all been because they've just refused to listen.
Yeah. If they had compromised at first with Reggie or Mary, just an inch,
right, and
they had moved the books into the
would
adult section, none of this would have happened. None of us would have met. None of us would have gone through all this process. I wouldn't have been writing satire about the library. I wouldn't have been writing investigative journalism. Susan Wade might not have quit from
somewhere. There's an alternate universe where Susan Wade is
still writing.
Yeah.
Chris Drew would not have had his man bun pointed up.
I know.
All of these things would have been continued on.
Renee would still be executive director. Allison would still be on the board. Like, there's a whole alternate universe where all these things didn't change. No, I know. I think it's just very interesting. And ironically, I said, well, what do you think we should do? And he mentioned a listening session, which, hilarious.
We listened to them.
Right. He wants to do a listening session, or he thinks maybe it would be a good idea to do a listening session. And I agree with him, but like 2 years ago. Like, let's do a listening session 2 years ago where you could have heard our concerns, made some serious concessions, and it is what it is.
Yeah, it's a little too late.
It's a little too late. I don't think we buy the NPS score at this point.
No, it looks like it's been curated.
And then there are concerns like NPS scores are usually for like a business, like a for-profit business. It's hardly used for a nonprofit business.
It seems a little too WEF.
It's a little strange to use something like that, for the library, but
it seems like it's well positioned to make them look good, despite the fact that they're getting so much criticism from the community.
Right.
So,
and I think there's a real pipeline where they're not willing to go outside of a certain set of ideals and a certain mode of operandum, like a method of how they run. So everything boils down to, well, the ALA suggests this, or this is other libraries do this, or this is what other, they're comparing themselves to other libraries, and it's less community and more what does places like the ALA say, or what do other libraries do? Well, we don't need to be like other libraries. This is Christian County. We can do a survey that's not an NPS score. We can choose a different, system of...
We can be independent. I don't think they have that capacity to understand what independence looks like. They are so tied into doing what everybody else is doing, to following the hive mind, to fit in and go along, because they don't have an original thought in their own head. I'll just say it. They're not creative people. They're slavish to what everybody else is doing. So,
in a lot of ways, definitely. I think I just thought it was ironic that he wants to do a listening session now, and we've been begging to be listened to for 2 years now.
He thinks a listening session will somehow mollify everybody.
I think, and he did bring up a valid point, is that the employees don't feel comfortable speaking during a board meeting, and so. Okay, I understand that. If I was working somewhere, I wouldn't do that either. So they're wanting more of a dialogue, a setting that's more dialogue. His point was that the board meetings are for the board. and that the public isn't supposed to be dialoguing back and forth with the board. But the reason that this happened is because we all did set those private meetings. We all did, go to the librarian and say, hey, this is weird, or meet with Renee and say, hey, this isn't cool.
Yeah.
And so that was our last recourse.
Yeah, I think almost all of us had a private meeting with Renee.
Right.
All of us tried to reason with her, and instead she put her heels in. She decided that she wanted to get up on that cross and nail her own hands up there and nail her own feet, and she sacrificed herself for the good of the cause.
Yeah. And there's this definite sense, almost like a religious fervor about, we have to provide all materials, and some people are going to be offended by certain materials, which I agree with, at face value. But there's a compromise in that, the age of majority, we already protect them in society.
Yeah, we protect them from video games. We
alcohol
abuse for movies.
Right. Operating a motor vehicle, all kinds of things. There's already a precedent in society where we do protect minors. But at the library, that's suddenly thrown out the window, and now everything has to be made available to all, which is wild.
If we were to put alcohol on the shelf in the children's section,
right,
that would be allowed because it's a library, or in a school setting. We should put alcohol there because for some reason that children should be allowed to do all of these things in a school setting.
Yeah, and his attitude is, if you don't like it, move on. Well, I wouldn't like hypodermic needles at the park either, but it's like you're going to say something if you see it around your children. Yeah. These are our most precious blessings that we can have as our children, and
to pretend that this type of material doesn't harm a child is insane.
Right.
There is no scientific evidence. All the evidence points that it does, and so we can argue till we're blue in the face with these people. Yep. They don't care.
That's where I hit a wall. I'm sitting in this meeting, and he's a nice enough guy. I don't have any. It's nothing personal per se. I just realized I'm never going to agree, and he's never going to agree. We both have our points. His point is we have to make everything available to everybody. And my point is, but can we limit it for children in some ways? Like if a parent wants to get that, fine. But, the majority of parents really don't want that, okay?
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, I don't want my children opening a book and seeing nudity, or you know what I mean?
Well, it's
genitalia, sexual content.
It's so much worse than just plain old nudity. It's not like going to the art museum. It's graphic, intense, descriptive.
Yeah.
How-to guides.
I'll cop to it. The one book that got removed, I'm a Gay Wizard, was me. I did that. So I'm pretty proud of getting that one removed. That's a Wattpad book. I don't know if you're familiar with that publishing company.
No.
So it's sort of like, I would say akin to like Reddit, where people are like just on there with an anonymous account, typing up the most lurid thoughts that they have, and then Wattpad will publish it, okay? So it's like intense sexual content. It's not a great publishing company, okay? They just publish a lot of things.
They publish trash.
Pretty much. Anybody can get on there and type a sexual fantasy and get it published and slap an AI cover on there, and suddenly you got a romance author, so.
And I can't get published for the life of me.
I know, right?
And I don't publish just that kind of stuff. But yeah. So
I would buy a satire book for sure.
Well, I do more than satire.
I'll take a Baloo, though. No, you should write one of those.
I have my Baloo satire is about 70,000 words now.
Oh my gosh. That's a book right there.
Yeah. All this Baloo satire has amounted to about 70,000 words.
You know what's weird? I kind of imagine it as like a cartoon sometimes.
Yeah, I think it would make a good Animal Farm.
Yeah.
But we're digressing.
Yeah.
So
back on track. But anyway, yeah. So it was definitely an interesting meeting, informative meeting. We kind of both realized, as a human being, maybe you're a decent person, but we disagree, and we disagree in a way that there's no compromise, really, I think.
Yeah, there really isn't any compromise with that. It's like Peter Berger. He writes The Sacred Canopy. He's an anthropologist, sociologist. And he says that when you create your worldview, your cosmology, you have this understanding of how the world works. And the people who see the world this way, they're so rigid in their understanding of how the world is, they cannot see the world in any other light.
Right.
And so because they have a religious worldview, they see everybody else as heretics or apostates or godless.
Right. And by religious, you don't mean God, you mean their own religion.
Yeah, they
Right.
operate under religious worldview.
Yes.
And they see us as the godless ones.
Right.
And so
That's so funny because during the meeting, he kind of got a little emotional about how, and I don't recall anyone saying this, but he said some of the people who've spoken at meetings have said he's going to go to hell. And he was upset about it. And I think, I mean, I don't condone yelling at anyone or passing judgment because that's obviously not our place. But I think speaking the truth and speaking the truth boldly and often is the only way that's going to wake these people up.
yeah.
It's the only thing that's going to get to that inky black core inside them that goes, you know what? I know what I'm doing is wrong.
Yeah, we have to call them to redemption.
Right.
And I think sometimes the people who are standing on that side, they won't hear anything else but that call to redemption. And so if we just tell them, you're fine, there's nothing wrong with you, we just disagree with you, and we make it completely intellectual,
Right.
they sometimes, unless you touch them on that emotional plane.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, and I do think sometimes some of our speakers get a little...
Agreed. I mean, they go places I wouldn't go. I'll say that.
But that's free speech for you,
Yeah.
and free speech is allowed to say things that we don't always agree with. I don't always agree with every speaker that gets up there.
But I mean, I will say, like, I've seen so many people logically lay out these amazing, presentations and research and, these arguments that have come from such an, like you said, an intellectual place. And what gets them the most is scripture being read, prayer being said, them going, repent now, or,
Yeah.
that's what really upset. And I think that's kind of telling a little bit. I mean, he mentioned your reputation is bad. And I told him, I don't care about my reputation. I care about whether God approves of me.
Yeah.
That's all I care about.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I know that sometimes I'll give a logical argument, and my logical arguments mean nothing.
Right.
But I think the most powerful comment I ever had was when I just read from Isaiah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember if it was Isaiah 19 or something else. And all I did was just read from Isaiah 19. And it was just that passage, and it didn't have any other effect. And I think that was more important than anything else I'd ever said for an entire year. So,
yeah.
Any other comments about this?
I mean, I think we got it. I think just, I hope that your listeners and anyone on Right to Win Ozarks continues to pray. We cannot let up with the gas on this issue. We've got to keep going. The fight is still happening.
Yeah, I think people think since we got the fourth board member, everything's resolved. It is not resolved yet. We need a new executive director who's going to be faithful to God, but also faithful to pushing these issues forward in the library, because it's going to take a long time to fix what's happened.
Oh, yeah.
It's not going to get solved tomorrow.
And they're still facing a lot of resistance among staff, amongst, there's still the whole U-turn group that, will come. And
we might have lawfare. So we just need prayer. We need people showing up still. Yeah. So please keep coming.
Yep.
All right.
Agreed.
Thanks, Deborah.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. It was a great interview.
All right.